Okay, so welcome everyone. So this is the stats review for the final exam workshop. My name is Sierra. I'm the stats tutor for the College of Health and Human Sciences Student Success Center. I'm a third year here at San Jose State. I am majoring in forensic science and minoring in psychology. And then a little fun fact about me is that I have 5 dogs at home. So it's pretty crazy, lots of dogs. I love it. I'm definitely a dog person with 5 dogs. So all right. So today we're going to be going through a worksheet that I created. So we have the topics that we'll cover. We'll be covering the levels of measurement, the least squares prediction equation, the correlation coefficient, the t-test, chi-squared, and Anovas. If anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to unmute or type in the chat. I'll be watching the chat as well to make sure. Yeah, so let's start with a little poll. It's just a poll about what class you're in. So if you're in Stat 95, PH 67, or UNVS 15S, which is Statway. All right, cool. All right, looks like everyone is good with using the poll feature. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll go to the worksheet. Okay, perfect. So we'll start with doing the levels of measurement. So we're just gonna match which one goes to which, but these are going to be polls. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. So nominal. So just match nominal with what you think the definition is. So is it a property in equal intervals, a single property classification, naming scales in no numerical order, or property is a true zero, or property is in order and there are differences in degree and kind? So feel free to answer whatever you think is correct. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. We're just learning to make sure we got everything. So we'll give it 15 more seconds. All right, so it looks like a majority of us picked the right answer, but let's go over it. So nominal is single property classification, naming scales, and no numerical order. So that's going to be B. So examples of that would be like your favorite song or your favorite food or your favorite kind of dog. It's just you're picking one thing that is your favorite. There's no like order of like you're saying your least favorite food to your most favorite food. So it's just you pick one thing and that's your favorite, I guess, for that example. Does anyone have any questions on that one? You could unmute or message in the chat. And yeah. All right, so it doesn't look like anyone has any questions, so let's move on to the next one. So now ordinal. So the same answer choices, just for ordinal. Cross off B. So I already used that. All right, I'll give it 10 more seconds before we move on to the next one. All right. So it looks like we have a general consensus that the answer is D. So property is in order and there are differences in kind and degree. So that's kind of like what I was talking about on the last question with saying like least to most. So your least to most favorite food or that kind of thing. And there's also a hint in the definition. So property is in order. So order and ordinal kind of sound the same, right? So does anyone have any questions on that one? No? All right, we'll move on to the next one then. So now we are on interval. So which one do you think interval is? All right. We'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, awesome. So it looks like almost everyone picked A. So property is in equal intervals. So this one also kind of has the hint of equal intervals and then interval. But that one is like so the example I gave is like the Fahrenheit scale. So it goes up by 1 degree, right? It keeps going up by the same amount, or if you want to say like 0.1 degree, it goes up by 0.1 degree every time. There's no like it will jump from like 100.1 to 100.7 without anything in between, right? It still has those intervals in between it. So does anyone have any questions on that one? No? All right. So let's move. So that leaves us with C at the end for ratio, right? So property is a true zero. So the example is like twice or 4 times as much. So like you're twice as likely versus zero, like you're not likely at all, right? So yeah. So does anyone have any questions on that whole levels of measurement on any of them? No? Ooh, thank you. Whoever put that in the no button, that works perfectly. Thank you. All right. Let's move on then to the prediction. So, a researcher studies the relationship between sending and receiving text messages. The following table is what they find. So they have that data. So we can't really see that. So let me do this really fast. Oops. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. Okay, we'll just leave this up so that way we have the data when we go to calculate the slope. Okay, so can anyone tell me what the formula for calculating the slope is? Does anyone know? You can unmute or type it in the chat if you know. No? Okay, I'll give it to you guys. So it is, so the slope, so B means slope. So slope is equal to B. Okay, so it's B is equal to N times the sum of X times Y minus the sum of X times the sum of Y divided by the sum, or sorry, not the sum, n times the sum of x squared minus the sum of x squared. And that's it. That's the entire formula. So let's go through these a little bit because it's probably a little bit confusing. So does anyone know what the sum of x times y is? So this one right here, does anyone know what we should do to figure that, to find the sum of x times y?
Multiply x and y, and then you just add it up.
Good, yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Esther. So yeah, so we'll just multiply each one of these and then add it up to find it. So we'll come back to that once we actually do it. But can anyone tell me what the difference between, sorry, let me change the highlighter color. What the difference between this and this is? I know it could be kind of confusing.
For the first one, I think you you square each data point of x and add them together.
Uh-huh.
And then the second one, you add all the data points and then square the result.
Yes, good, perfect. So let me write that out. So the sum of x squared in parentheses. So you sum, or you square first, then add. And then for the sum of x squared, you add first, then square it. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's start filling in what we know so far. So let's start with, so b is equal to, so what is n? Can anyone tell me what n is?
It's like the number, I don't know like the word for it, but I know it's like the number of texts sent or received. So it'd be 11? No. 10, sorry.
So for this one, it's your explanation is correct, but it's only going to be 5 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of data points. So like if we were to like plot this on the graph, we would go to 12 on the x-axis and 14 on the y-axis. So that would only be one data point, right? So that's why it's only 5. Does that make sense? Or does anyone?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, good. Okay, so n is going to be 5. Okay, so let's do our sum of x times y. So let's do it step by step. So can anyone tell me what 12 times 14 is? Just plug it in on your calculator and see what you get. Just 12 times 14, that's it.
168.
Yes, good, thank you. And then what about 8 times 17?
136.
Good, thank you. And what about 8 times 12?
96.
Good, and 6 times 9?
54.
Yes. And then 1 times 7?
7.
Good, thank you. And then can anyone add those all up?
461.
461. Good. Yes. And thank you, Jasmine, in the chat. Sending the same thing. Okay. 461. Good. 461. Okay. Minus now the sum of x. So can anyone add up all these values and tell me what you get? So 12 plus 8 plus 8 plus 6 plus 1. So just adding up the text sent column. All right, that's okay. I think it should be 35, but if I did my math wrong, someone let me know so I could make sure to fix it. So 35. Okay, can anyone add up the text received column? So 14 plus 17 plus 12 plus 9 plus 7. $59. Good. Thank you. Oh, let me write that. 59. Good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on again. So what was n again? Can anyone tell me?
5.
5. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to the sum of x squared. So the first one, this one right here. So we need to square all the numbers first and then add. So we're only going to square this column right here for that. We don't even need the y, it's just the x's. So could anyone plug that into their calculator and tell me what you get? So you'll just square 12, square 8, square 8, square 6, and square 1, and then add those all together, and then tell me what you get. $309. Good, perfect. Thank you. All right, and then let's do the next one. So the sum of x squared. So we'll do this one now. So we just need to add all of x and then square it. So can anyone tell me what they get for that? Yes, good. 1,225. Good. Thank you. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So what can anyone tell me what 5 times 461 is?
$2,305.
Yes, good. 2,305. Okay, and what about 35 times 59? Good, 2,065. Perfect, thank you. Oop, that's kind of hard to read. Let me move it somewhere else. So it should be 2,305 minus 2,065. Good. Okay, so what is 5 times 309? Good. 1,545. Yes. Okay, minus 1,225. Okay, so now what is the top part? So 2,305 minus 2,065. 240. Yes, perfect. Thank you. 240 divided by, okay, and then what is 1,545 minus 1,225? 320. Perfect. Okay. And then what is 240 divided by 320? Good, 0.75. Perfect. Okay, so that is our slope. Does anyone have any questions on how we got to that? If you have a question at any point, feel free to stop me. You can unmute or send me a message directly or in the group chat. Thumbs up. Good. Thank you. Of course, you can also use the like emojis, the yes or no, to tell me if you're okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to calculating the intercept. So does anyone know what the formula to calculate the intercept is? It's kind of a long formula. It's a hard one to remember, like the slope formula. Right. All right, that's okay. I'll write it out because it's kind of hard to remember. So so intercept is the same thing as saying A. So it is the sum of y times the sum of x squared. Well, I guess I'm writing that too close to that line a bit. Okay, the sum of y times the sum of x squared. Hold on, I'm sorry, now it's all ugly. Okay. Minus, so the sum of x times the sum of x times y divided by n times the sum of x squared minus the sum of x squared. Okay, so it's pretty similar numbers to what we calculated in the slope. They're just in different orders. So let's go ahead and start working on that. So when we calculated the sum of y, what was it? So we calculated it up here in this part.
59, right?
Yes, good, 59. Okay, and then what did we calculate for the sum of x squared? So this one right here. We also calculated that in the previous one.
35.
So that was just the sum of x. So the sum of x was 35. So we're looking for the sum of x squared. So it should be this one right here. So we should have this value 309. 309. Is that okay? Everyone's good with that? Yes, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the sum of x now is 35, like you said. Oscar, I believe you said, was 35. Good. Okay, so now what was the sum of x times y? We calculated that in the last one too.
Wait, the sum of x and y?
The sum of x times y.
Oh.
So it should be the one that's highlighted in yellow at the top.
Okay.
So it's 461.
Yes, perfect. Thank you guys. 461. Good. Okay, and then n was what again? What did we say n was? 5. Good, thank you. 5. Okay. And then what about the sum of x squared? So the same as this one again. 309. Perfect. Thank you. 309. Okay. And then what about this one? The sum of x in parentheses squared. So we also calculated that one in the last one. Good, thank you. 1,225. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so can anyone tell me what 59 times 309 is? So this is a new one. This is one you'll have to plug into your calculator. So we're just multiplying 59 times 309.
$18,231.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So 18,231. Okay. So what about 35 times 461? Good. 16,135. Perfect. 16,135. Okay. And then what about 5 times 309? Good. 1,545. Oops. 1,545, yeah. Minus 1,225. Okay. So now let's do the top part. So what is 18,231 minus 16,135? Good, perfect, thank you. 2,096. Okay, and what is 1,545 minus 1,225? 320. Yes, thank you. Okay, and then what is that? What is 2096 divided by 320? 6.55. Yes, perfect. So that is our intercept. So does anyone know what the least squares prediction equation looks like without plugging in our numbers, just what it looks like normally? All right, no, that's okay. So I'll give it to you guys. So it's y prime is equal to b times x plus a. Okay, so let's go through what each of those variables means. So does anyone know what y prime would stand for? Yes, perfect. Thank you, Esther. So predicted y value. So I'm just going to put predicted value. Predicted value. Okay, and I told you what B stands for. So does anyone remember what does B stand for? Slope. Yes, perfect. All right, what about X? Does anyone know what X would stand for? Score on X variable. Yes, you're very close. So it's going to be our known value. So yes, it also is the score on the X value because that's what you would plug in for the X axis, right? So yes, just another way of saying it is the known value. All right, so what about A? What did A stand for? Intercept. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now that we know the equation, let's plug in our variables for what we have on what we calculated. So we should have, can anyone tell me what the equation should be once we plug it in? Plug in what we found. You could just type it in the chat or unmute yourself if you're comfortable with that. So we calculated B and A. So once you plug those in, what should our equation be?
Sorry, what exactly was the correlation coefficient again? Or like, oh, you're asking for the equation of it, right?
Yeah, we're not at the correlation coefficient yet, just yet.
Sorry.
We're about to. That's okay. We're about to move on to that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start it. So y prime is equal to, so we calculated B. So what did we calculate for B? Good. 0.75. So 0.75 times x, or x here. Let me move this because it's going to get messed up by that. Okay, plus, and then what did we calculate for A? 6.55. Yes, thank you both. 6.55. So that is our least squares prediction equation. So does anyone have any questions on everything we've done so far? All right. So just to let you guys know, you will, at the end, I'm going to send out a survey link just to see how you guys felt I did, how everything went. You'll fill that out and then you'll put your email at the end, and then I'll email you a blank copy of the worksheet and then the answer key and the worksheet that we're working on right now. So you get 3 documents, and you'll get that at the end, just to let you know. All right, so let's move on to the correlation coefficient equation. So does anyone know what the correlation coefficient equation is? Like a tongue twister, correlation coefficient equation. It's also a super long equation. So it starts with R equals. So if that rings any bells, so correlation coefficient means R. So that's what R stands for. So if that rings any bells with anyone, could share what you think it is. It's super long. No? Okay, that's okay. I'll give it to you guys. So it's super long again, but we use a lot of the same values that we calculated doing the slope and the intercept. So n times the sum of x times y minus the sum of x times the sum of y divided by, so we'll take the square root of just the bottom part. So we'll take the square root of n times the sum of x squared minus the sum of x squared times n times the sum of y squared. Sorry, let me go back. So that way, y squared minus the sum of y squared. Does that look familiar to anyone? It's a pretty long equation, hard to remember. No, it doesn't look familiar. That's okay. Well, you're seeing it now, so okay, so let's go on and try and calculate that. So we're gonna have to go to the next page just to go over this or have enough room to write this. So, all right, so r is equal to, so what was n? Can anyone tell me what n was?
It was 5.
5. Good. Okay. And then what about the sum of x times y? So we calculated that in a couple of these. So it's this one right here, the sum of x times y. And we also calculated it right here. $461. Yes, thank you. 461 minus. Okay, so what was the sum of x? Does anyone remember? So we calculated that in the last one as well.
$35?
Yes, perfect. 35. Thank you. So 35. And then what about the sum of y? So we calculated that right here. 59. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. 59. Okay. Let's move on to the bottom part. So the square root. Okay, so n was 5, right? 5. Okay, so what about the sum of x squared? So in parentheses, so this one right here. So we calculated that in a couple different places.
$309.
Yes, perfect. 309, thank you. Okay, and then what about the sum of x in parentheses and then squared? So this one. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Christina. So 1,225. Okay, so now let's do the next part. So n was 5, right? Okay, so now this part we haven't calculated these at all. So let's go to here and we'll calculate that. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, but with y instead of x this time. So the sum of y squared and the sum of y squared. So for this one right here, we're going to do the same thing as this one. So these two will be the same, and then these two will be the same. But we're just going to use it with the y values. So can anyone calculate what this first one, so the sum of y squared in parentheses is? So we'll need to square all of these values and then add it up. $759. Yes, perfect. Thank you. 759. So let me write that over here. Okay. And then what about this one right here? So the sum of y in parentheses squared. So we'll square the sum of all of them. $3,481. Yes, 3,481. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now we need to do a bunch of math. So, can anyone tell me what 5 times 461 is? $2,305. Perfect. 2,305. Okay, minus. And then what is 35 times 59? $2,065. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then let's do the bottom. So let's do this part first. So what is 5 times 309? 1,545. Good. And then what is that number minus 1,225? 320. Good. Okay. So 320 times. Okay, and then now let's move on to this part. So what is 5 times 759? Good. 3,795. So what is that number minus 3,481? $314. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So now let's do the top part. So what is 2,305 minus 2,065? 240. Yes, perfect. 240. Okay, and then what is 320 times 314? Yes, perfect. Thank you. So 100,480. Okay, so then what is the square root of that number? So what is the square root of 100,480? Yes, good. About 316.986. Okay, good. So we'll just round it to 2 decimal places, so 0.99. Good. Okay, so what is 240 divided by that number? So divided by 316.99. Yes, good. So we'll round that to 2 decimal places again. So 0.76. So that's what our R is equal to. Good. So does anyone have any questions about how we got any of that? No? Okay, good. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to go over the strength. So does anyone, well, actually, let's just start. So this one's going to be a poll. So the strength. So is the strength of this weak, medium, or strong? So just give it your best shot based on what you know, and then we'll go over it after. So is 0.76 weak, medium, or strong? We'll give it 10 more seconds. All right. So we're kind of split between all 3 of the answer choices. So let's go over it. So first we'll go over the strength. So for a weak strength, can anyone tell me what the R would be for if it was weak? So it's going to be the absolute value of something, some number. Does anyone know what the number is? No, that's okay. So it's 0.25. And then, so medium. Does anyone know what it would be? So the absolute value of something.
Would it be 0.50?
Yes, good. So it's 0.50. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so then strong, the last one. So does anyone know what it would be?
Would it? I know it goes all the way to 1.0. I don't remember.
That's okay. Okay, so you would think it would probably be 0.75 since it appears that these two go up by 0.25, but they want to trick us. So it's actually 0.80. So anything that is 0.25 or lower, it will be weak. And anything that's 0.26 to 0.79 is going to be medium. And then everything that's above 0.80 is going to be strong. So based on that, what do you guys think the strength is? I'm going to redo the poll again.
Wait, so between 0.25 and 0.50, what is it again?
Here, I'll write that out. So,
Okay.
So everything that is less, so we'll just use X. So X is less than 0.25 would be weak. And then everything that is 0.251 to x to 0.7999 whatever is going to be medium. And then everything that is greater than 0.80 will be strong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so let's relaunch the poll. So let's go over that and see based on knowing that, what do you think the answer is now? All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, we'll end the poll. Okay, good. So everyone got it now. So our strength is, let me change the color, is medium. That's our answer for that. Good. Okay, so let's move on to direction. That one's also a poll, so let me pull that up. Okay, so what is the direction? Is it a negative direction or is it a positive direction based on our R value? All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, looks like we have almost everyone's responses. So I'll go ahead and end it. So everyone picked positive, which is correct. It is positive. So what if our answer was negative 0.76? What would that make the direction? Negative, good, perfect. And that would be because it would have the negative sign, so that makes it a negative direction, right? Okay. So based off of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip these two questions. They'll be in the answer key, and it'll have a full explanation on the answer key of how to go through them. But for time's sake, we will go just go past. So t-test. Okay, so let's start with I'll start by reading it. So a researcher wants to determine if there's a positive relationship between sending and receiving text. He uses the following data and the sample correlation coefficient, so R is equal to 0.80. Okay, so we have another poll. So let's go. What do you think the alternative hypothesis would be? So go ahead and try that to the best of your ability, and then we'll go over it. So this is the alternative hypothesis. We'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. So we have a wide variety of answers. So let's go ahead and go over it. So a researcher wants to determine if there is a positive relationship between sending and receiving text. So let me change to a different color. Okay. So let me highlight. So it says, let me change that color. Actually, it's kind of hard to read with that. Okay, so if there is a positive relationship between sending and receiving text. So because of that, our alternative hypothesis is going to be P is greater than 0. Because if P would be greater than 0, that means it's a positive relationship, right? Like it says here, it wants to see if there's a positive relationship. So if it had said wants to determine if there is a negative relationship, it would be, so negative it would be P is less than 0, because in order for there to be a negative relationship, P has to be smaller than 0, right? Because that would mean that it's a negative number. And then if it had just said if they want to determine if there's any relationship, so it doesn't specify positive or negative, then it would be P is not equal to 0. Does anyone have any questions on that? Or does that make sense? No, that does not make sense. Okay. Oh, it does make sense. Okay. Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you everyone for using those features. Okay. So now let's do the null. So, okay, so what do you think the null is? We'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, so it looks like we do have the majority. So the majority said that the answer is P is equal to 0, which is correct. So usually the null does not have anything other than equal sign. Like it doesn't ever use greater than or not equal to or greater or less than. So it's generally usually P is equal to 0. So does anyone have any questions on that? No questions. Okay. So now let's move on to the degrees of freedom. So can anyone tell me what the formula we should use for this one is? Uh, 1 minus n. So for this one, we're actually going to do n minus 2. So we're doing 2 because it's in pairs. So like this is a pair, this is a pair, this is a pair, this is a pair, and this is a pair. So because it's pairs, we'll do n minus 2. But if they hadn't even given us this category, then it would be n minus 1, like you said. So does that make sense? Anyone have any questions on that? No? Okay. Good, thank you. So what is n? So let's solve that. So what is n? So it's pretty similar to what we did in this prediction problem. 5. Yes, perfect, thank you. So 5 minus 2. So what is 5 minus 2? 3. Yes, perfect. So our degrees of freedom is going to be 3. Okay, so let's go on. So what is the T critical value? So this is going to require you to pull up your T table and to go over that. So does everyone know how to read a T table? If you don't know, please say you don't. You could private message me that you don't if you don't want anyone to know that you don't know how. And I will go over it if you don't know how. But if not, could you please look at that and tell me what it should be? No, my professor only showed us how to use Excel. Okay, perfect. I'll go over it then. So let me, let me share this screen. So we'll go to this. Okay, so you guys could see the T table, right?
Yeah, we can see a t-table.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in our problem, it did not tell you, it did not give you a confidence value, right? So if it does not give you a confidence value, you always want to use t is 0.95, right? That's always what you want to use. So if our degrees of freedom, we calculated to be 3. So if we go to the side here and we go 1, 2, 3, and then we move over to where t is 95 here, our value should be 2.353. So does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions on how we got that? No. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to stop this share. Let me go back to sharing on here. Okay. So that means that our T critical should be 2.353. Okay. So we'll state the decision rule. So reject the null, so HO, at the 0.05 level of significance if T calc, so the value we calculate, so should it be greater than or less than T critical in order to reject it? So should the value we calculate be higher or lower than the value we get from the table? Less than. So it's actually going to be higher. So we want the value we calculate to be higher than the value that we obtain from the table in order to reject the null. So it should be greater than or equal to 2 point. So we found at the table to be 2.5353 given degrees of freedom is equal to n minus 2, which is equal to 5 minus 2, which is equal to 3. So does anyone have any questions on how we got that? No? Okay. So let's move on to calculating the t. So this equation for t is going to be a little bit different because we're using the correlation coefficient to calculate it. So does anyone know what the equation would be if we use the correlation coefficient? All right, that's okay. I'll give it to you guys. So it's r is divided by the square root of 1 minus r squared divided by n minus 2. Okay, so let's plug in what we know into the equation. So what was r? So it gave you that over here. So what was r? Okay, so it gave us here the correlation coefficient is 0.80. So our r is going to be 0.80. So divided by 1 minus 0.80 squared divided by, so what is n again? 5. Yes, thank you. 5 minus 2. Okay. So 0.80. So can anyone tell me what 1 minus 0.8 squared is? Anyone? Okay, so 0.8 squared is 0.64. So 1 minus 0.64. Yes, thank you. 0.36. Okay, and then what is 5 minus 2? 3. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so 0.80 divided by, so what is 0.36 divided by 0.3? Or sorry, 0.36 divided by 3. 0.12, yes. 0.12. Okay. And then what is the square root of 0.12? 0.346. Good. 0.3464. Good. Okay. And then what is 0.80 divided by 0.3464? Yes, 2.31. So we'll take it out to 3 decimal places only because the t critical value has 3 decimal places. We'll just keep it the same. Okay. So based off of that, let's make our decision. So do you think we should reject the null or retain the null based on what we get? What we calculated, sorry. We'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay, so we're pretty evenly split on what we should do. So let's think about it. So if we want to reject the null, then our t critical value, so t critical, which is the number we get from the table, has to be smaller than our t table value. And then to retain the null, our t critical value has to be bigger than our t table value. Okay, so based off of that, let's redo the poll again to see if our answers change. All right, let's try it again. Oops, that's not the right thing. Sorry. Relaunch. There we go. Okay, let's try it again. You know what? I just realized I wrote these backwards. To reject the null, I wrote, yeah, hold on, sorry. calculated, not t-table, because t-critical and t-table are the same thing, right? So t-calculated. So in order to reject the null, our t-critical value has to be smaller than our t-calculated value. And in order to retain the null, our t-critical value has to be bigger than our t-calculated value. So let me redo that again. That's my fault. Sorry, guys. I wrote the same thing twice. Okay, let's try it again. So in order to reject the null, so the value from the table has to be smaller than the value we calculate. And in order to retain the null, our value from the table has to be bigger than our value that we calculate. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, good. So now it looks like everyone's got it now that I explained it correctly. So our answer is, let me change colors. Actually, not that color. That we will retain the null. Okay, so what error type does that make it? If we retain the null, what error type is it? Is it a type 1 error or a type 2 error? Okay, we'll give it 10 more seconds. So Maya sent out the link for the feedback survey. If you guys could fill that out. I'll send it again once the workshop is over, but just in case anyone has to leave early. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. So it looks like we're 100% split down the middle. So let's go over this. So a type 1 error is when you reject the null. And a type 2 error is when you retain the null. So based off of that, our answer should be a type 2 error because we did retain the null. So type 2. Does anyone have any questions on that, or does that make sense? Good. Okay. So we only have about 14 minutes left, but I have 2 more things that we could cover, but we're only going to have time for one. So we could either go over a chi-squared example or an Anova example. So I'm going to have you guys vote on which one you would rather cover. And then when I send out the answer key, it'll have the solution to both. So that way you could still see both. But which one would you guys rather go over? So Anova or chi-squared? I'll just have you guys put it in the chat or unmute. Anova. Okay, it looks like everyone wants Anova. So we'll go over Anova. But the answers for the other one will be on the answer key when I send it out, so you could still look at that. Okay, let's go over Anova. Okay, so a researcher wants to determine if the orientation, so 0 degrees, 90 degrees, or 180 degrees, will affect the amount of time in seconds that an adult will take to read a passage. The following data table shows the research results. So let me draw the lines here. So it's a little bit more clear because it's kind of small once you, here, actually I'll zoom in on this side. Okay. So what is the experimental hypothesis? So what is another way of saying experimental hypothesis? Does anyone know? Alternative, yes. So this is the same thing as saying alternative hypothesis. Thank you. Okay, so I have another poll for that one. So let's go over that. Here we go. Okay. So what do you think would be the alternative hypothesis. Okay, I'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay. So it looks like the majority got it correct. So it's going to be mean 1 is not equal to mean 2, which is not equal to mean 3. So that is because, well, would anyone that picked that choice want to explain why it's that?
Because we're trying to determine if there's a certain relationship between these different variables. So, if we're saying so, then we're saying that if they're sorry, it's kind of hard to explain without the null hypothesis.
Yeah, that's
But generally, it's not equal to all of those because then we're saying that there is a significant difference.
good.
between-
Yes. Yes, perfect. So it also doesn't say it will positively or negatively affect the amount of time it takes. So that would be why it's not greater than or less than. That's why it's just not equal to. Good. Thank you for explaining that. That was a good explanation. Okay, so now let's do the null really quickly. We want to make sure we could cover this whole problem. All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds. All right, perfect. So it looks like everyone got that one. So it is going to be mean 1 is equal to mean 2, which is equal to mean 3. All right, does anyone have any questions on how we got that? No? All right, let's move on. So now we'll do the independent variable. So can anyone tell me what the definition for an independent variable is without telling me what the answer to this one is? So what is the independent variable? Or what is a independent variable? The one you manipulate. Good. So the one you change. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so based on that, what do you guys think is the independent variable for this problem specifically? So which one are we manipulating in this one? Orientation, perfect. Yes, so we're manipulating whether it's 0 degrees, 90 degrees, or 180 degrees. Perfect. Okay, so what is the dependent variable for this one? So the dependent variable is the one that's affected by what we changed. So we're not changing it. It's just like what we're measuring, basically. What do you guys think that would be? Reading time in seconds. Perfect. Yeah, so it's going to be reading time. So reading time and time, same thing. So reading time, good. Okay, we're gonna skip the decision rule just for this part, but we will let's calculate the degrees of freedom first. So can anyone tell me how to calculate degrees of freedom between, what the formula for that is?
Number of groups minus 1.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So number of groups minus 1. So how many groups do we have in this problem?
3.
3. Perfect. Yes. So we have 1, 2, 3. Good. So 3 minus 1. So 2. Okay. So what about degrees of freedom within? Does anyone know how to calculate that?
Wouldn't it be number of groups and then times the number of scores in the groups minus 1?
So I think it would actually be the number of scores total minus the number of groups. So number of scores minus the number of groups. So can anyone tell me what the number of scores is?
Is it 9?
Yes, perfect. It's 9. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. So 9 minus, and then the number of groups was 3, right? So 9 minus 3 is equal to 6. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on how we got that? No. Okay, perfect. So let's move on. So we only have a couple minutes left, so we'll try and get through it as much as we can. So does anyone know what the formula for the sum of scores between is? I'll just give it to you guys just for time's sake. So sum of squares between is equal to, so the sum of x1 squared divided by n plus the sum of x2 squared divided by n plus the sum of x3 squared divided by n. Okay, so let's solve. Okay, so what is the sum of x1 squared? Or the sum of x1, sorry. So the sum of x1 means we just add all these up and get a number. So what should we get? So when we add up 5 plus 4 plus 6, what do we get?
So it's 15 to the second
15 squared divided
over 3.
3. Yes, perfect. Okay, good. So what about the second one? What is the sum of x2? So this one here.
$36.
Yes. 36 squared divided by what?
3.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then what about the third one? So the sum of x in the third row squared. What would that be? So 20 plus 22 plus 21. 63. Yes, 63. Good. Okay. So what is 15 squared? 225. Yes. And then what is that divided by 3? 225 divided by 3. 75. Yes. Okay. And then what about 36 squared? 432. Yes. And then what is that number divided? Oh, yes, I see. So 36 squared divided by 3 is 432. Good. Yes. So 36 squared would be 1,296. And then we divide that by 3, and that's 432. Good. Thank you, guys. All right. So what about 63 squared and then divided by 3? Okay, yes, 1,323. And then what is that divided by 3?
1,323 is the total. My bad. I didn't write that down.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. 1,323. Okay, so I just realized I left out part of the formula. So it's going to be this whole value that we already, the red that we already had, and then minus. So overall total squared divided by big N. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to leave that out. Okay. So what is the overall total? Does anyone know? So that means that we're going to add up every single number. So we'll add 5 plus 4 plus 6 plus 9 plus 15 plus 12 plus 20 plus 22 plus 21 to get a total number. Can anyone tell me what that is? So you could also just add up 15 plus 36 plus 63. $114, good. 114 squared. And then what is big N? Does anyone know what the value for big N should be? Okay, so 3 is the small n. So that's the number of groups we have. So big N is the total number of scores. So it would be 9. Yes, correct. Thank you. Okay, so what is 114 squared divided by 9? $1,444. Yes, thank you. Okay, so when we add 75 plus 432 plus 1,323, what do we get? Good. Okay, 1,830 minus 1,444. So what is the value you get when you subtract those? $386. Good. So that is our sum of squares between. Okay, so unfortunately we did go over time, but when I send out the answer key to you guys, it will include the rest of the solution since we didn't have enough time to finish it. I'm gonna send out the link again to the chat or to the survey for you guys to fill out, so that way I could get your email to send to you. So, oh, hold on, I'm on the wrong thing. So that's the survey. And then, so I also recorded this video or the workshop, and it's gonna be posted on the College of Health and Human Sciences YouTube channel. So this is the link to their YouTube channel. If you wanted to like rewatch the video again, you are able to. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask about anything we've covered so far. But if not, thank you guys for coming. I hope it was helpful, and I wish you guys luck on this final and the rest of your finals. So thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.